The Divine Arsonist, A Tale of Awakening. Written and read by the author, Jacob Nordby. Chapter 11. I emerged into consciousness the way a mirror clears when fog fades from its surface. Sleep evaporated from my brain, but I kept my eyes closed and reoriented myself. Perhaps it was the sound the tires made when we left the pavement that woke me. It took 3 seconds to connect the dots and remember that I was riding in a truck with Lucius. I moved my hands and felt the soft leather book under my palms. My fingertips recognized the embossed characters on Emerson's Bible. I had fallen asleep holding it on my lap. I opened my eyes and leaned forward. Lucius looked over at me. "You're awake. Good. We're almost there." I rolled my stiff shoulders and looked out the window. It was completely dark. How long did I sleep? Not sure. Maybe a couple of hours. 2 hours on the road would put us close to the town of Stanley, right at the base of the Sawtooth Mountains if we stayed on Highway 21 the whole time. That may not be the case, though. We could be anywhere in Idaho's interior wilderness for all I knew. Ahead of us, the headlights lit thick falling snow that covered the road and muffled the sound of our tires on the gravel. "How are you feeling?" Lucius asked. "Did your rest help? You did a lot of work." I thought about this. He was right. My body was sore in places. "I feel okay. I'm nervous, I guess. Not sure what I should expect next." I'd never been skydiving, but I imagined this must be like sitting strapped into a parachute for the first time, anticipating that leap into roaring nothingness through the open hatch. "I keep thinking about my business and my wife and kids. I've never done anything like this. I'm wondering what I got myself into." He gave a little laugh. "Huh, you want me to let you out? It's not too late." It wasn't funny, but I laughed anyway and tried to settle my racing heart. It was warm in the truck, but I kept suppressing a shiver that ran up my spine and constricted my chest. "It's all right to feel what you're feeling," he said. "In fact, that's all you need to do right now. Just be with the experience. Your anxiety is natural. You aren't comfortable with the unknown yet. Most humans, scratch that, all humans feel fear when they approach a threshold they've never crossed before. With practice, you'll learn that fear isn't a solid object. You've built barricades against the unknown in your life. You've tried to create certainty. See this as a castle in your mind. You're well defended against fear, and you do your best to keep it outside the walls. What you're getting ready to do is open the gate and follow me into territory you've never explored. Your mind tells you that this is crazy." "But is it crazy?" I asked. "I mean, will everything come out the way it should?" "You really mean is it safe? You mean will my life still be comfortable, don't you?" "Well," I thought about it. "Yes, I showed up today because I couldn't ignore the feeling you gave me. The entire week I sat at my desk and looked at everything. It all felt different." "Different how?" "Different in the way I just knew that if I didn't meet you again, I wouldn't be able to face myself for the rest of my life. Pushing through hardship and doing what it took to grow my business always motivated me. After you and I met last time, my head was messed up or something. Following my plan for the next 20 or 30 years seems, I don't know, bleak." He nodded. "I need to be clear about something. You have a lot of courage or you wouldn't be here. Nothing about what we're doing here is safe. Real? Yes. Safe and comfortable? Anything but." At that moment, we hit a patch of ice. The truck fishtailed sideways. We skidded toward the huge, gnarled trunk of a ponderosa pine. It was right there on the side of the vehicle, coming fast. I wrenched away from the door, but the seatbelt constrained me. In the instant before crashing, just before the black bark shattered my window, I looked at Lucius. He was chuckling. He spun the steering wheel in a couple of languid turns, and the truck pivoted away from the tree. One slow-motion second later, we were 15 yards down the road, driving like nothing had happened. My heart pounded hard. I blinked to get my eyeballs back in their sockets. The inside of my nose stung. I was still tense against the seatbelt. I righted myself and tried to breathe, eyes shut. That was close. "Close to what?" Lucius said, reading my thoughts again. "What?" I rubbed my palms on my pants. "What was that close to?" "I don't know," I said, feeling frustrated. angry. We had almost crumpled the truck around a tree 3 seconds ago, and now Lucius wanted to give me a pop quiz? Damn it, do we really have to examine everything that happens? No, you do know, he said, and yes, we do have to examine everything. What do you mean, I know? I don't know. It was just my automatic reaction to nearly crashing into a tree. I'm over it now, but why were you laughing? When you say automatic, that's what I'm talking about. You have all these reactions to things that happen. They run beneath the surface and control your life. The guy who swerves in front of you on the freeway pushes your murder button for just a second. You never stop to think about why. You just yell and flip him off and pound on your horn. Maybe you feel a little ashamed later, maybe not. But that's normal, isn't it, I said, a self-preservation thing? We're going way beyond normal here, he said. What I'm talking about is how to start unraveling your unconscious. You have to become like a hunter. Actually track down your random thoughts and reactions. Follow them back to their source. See where they really come from. It'll surprise you. Who does that, I said. It sounds like a whole lifetime of work. Where would I find time to live if I'm almost analyzing my life? We'll help with that. There are some ways to bypass the mind. In fact, what you humans call the mind must be transcended. It's too slow. It always wants to organize and analyze. It's a function of the ego, and although it's a powerful tool, you've allowed it to take control. You'll learn to control your mind. See, I said you will learn to control your mind. Yes, I heard you say that. I like the idea, but it sounds like you mean something more. What? You didn't hear the big clue, did you? I said you, as in the real you, will learn to control your mind. You don't recognize any distinction between mind and body and the authentic you. You're just one sloppy, overlapping reaction machine. You'll learn who you really are is the owner of your body and your personality and your mind. Eventually, you will be able to direct the actions of your mind and body consciously. This is mastery. By rising above and taking control of these tools, you can get on with your life experience. Right now, your tools are using you. Oh, and most people do spend a whole lifetime learning this. Many never even get a peek, and those who do are usually near death. I didn't like the idea that I had so much to learn. There was a whole ocean of knowledge previously unknown to me. I was dipping my toes into one tiny tributary. At that moment, we turned a corner and I saw a spot of light ahead. It was distant and above us. On the side of a mountain, perhaps. That's where we're going, Lucius said, pointing with his chin. He must have known that my heart was racing. Whatever was in store was almost upon me. I felt as if I was huddled beneath the gaze of a giant, invisible tiger who was crouched, ready to spring. Lucius reached across and rested his hand on my shoulder. You don't need to be afraid. I am, though. My hands were clenched, pressing down hard on the book in my lap. His hand disappeared and materialized a moment later before my face, holding a pen. I took it. Here, this will help. Open your book and turn to the second page. My fingers were shaky as I loosened the knotted ties. I found the second page. It was filled with blank lines except for one sentence at the top. Read it, he said, out loud. Generally speaking, a howling wilderness does not howl. It is the imagination of the traveler that does the howling, I read. That's written by Thoreau. Read it again, slowly. I did. He looked at me. Now, breathe very deeply, let it out, and then read it one more time. The intake of breath filled me with warmth. I held it for a couple of heartbeats, and the air rushed out as I read aloud for the third time. This steadied me somewhat. Take the pen and write, he said. Go back to your feeling of fear. Write that. Don't think about it. Just write the words as they enter your mind. They don't have to make sense. Name your fears. Quickly now, we don't have much time. Thoughts filled my brain, and I scribbled them on the empty page. Later, I would see that my pen was so erratic that the words were barely legible. At the edge of something, I can't be sure. Black and heavy, much bigger than me. Why did I come here? I want out. Stop the train. Please don't make me do this. No, that's not true. I can't go back, but I'm afraid. My toes are hanging over a cliff, and it's not safe. No guardrail here. He says trust and all is well. I don't feel that way. I can't breathe. My heart is pounding. This weird story is moving too fast. It can't be happening to me. Only crazy people believe this stuff. It's like an alien abduction. If I ever get home again, no one will ever believe me, and then what will happen? What will become of my life? I'm afraid that soon nothing will be the same as before. I will be alone and no one will know who I am. Not even me. My hand stopped moving. I closed my eyes. Beneath us, the truck downshifted and began to climb. I floated alone in my thoughts. The pit of my stomach was hollow, but my body stopped shaking. The angle of our ascent grew steeper, and I heard Lucius adjust something on the gear shift that caused a lower growl from the engine. "Good," he said. I opened my eyes and looked at him. "That's all for now. Hold that feeling. Just be with it," he said. "Which feeling? The sick-to-my-stomach afraid one?" "Yes, that one. Just feel what you're feeling. Don't think it. Feel it. Then, when you're sure you feel it all the way, breathe and let it go. That's the key." I worked at this. "Just be with it," he said. It was a struggle at first. I had never tried to isolate a feeling before. "Where do you feel it in your body?" he said. I thought for a minute. "At first all over, but it's strongest in my gut." "Good. Observe that now. Can you move it somewhere else?" I concentrated on the feeling, but it had already begun to evaporate. It was floating away like steam from a cup of hot tea. "See?" he said. I looked at him blankly, so he elaborated. "When you allow yourself to move into the experience and actually feel it rather than resist, it's manageable. You locate it in your body and then hold it. This way you can be fully present to whatever happens. You'll find this cuts fear short and allows you to grow your times of joy. You aren't always living ahead of yourself that way." "I'd love that," I said. "I'm always in a hurry. If life sucks, then I want to get busy and make it better. If things are good, I always think ahead and plot the next step. Kind of like going on vacation. As soon as I get to the resort, I can't relax and enjoy it because I'm already thinking about having to go back and face the normal stress again." "There it is," he said. "One of the basic causes of human suffering, always wishing you were somewhere other than where you are. You wish you had more money, a bigger house, a different partner, a nicer body, and on and on. It never stops." "What can we do about that?" I said. "It's just part of the human condition, isn't it?" "Later, we'll talk more about this. Look." He pointed. We topped a steep uphill grade in the road. Ahead of us, in a large clearing, stood a house set tight against a dark mountain. The windows glowed with yellow light that spilled out across the expanse of snow. My impression was all about the light and the shape. The warmth that radiated outward filled the space around it. The house was round. The top was covered with a glowing dome of glass. I looked at Lucius. He was smiling. "We're here," he said. Our tires crunched and made soft squeaking sounds in the snow as we plowed through the last few yards to the house. Lucius braked and we sat for a moment in the stillness. The engine ticked and steamed as it cooled. "Do I need to know anything before we go in?" I said, looking for reassurance. He snuffled a short laugh through his nose. "No, just go with the flow." This gave me no comfort. "Get your bag," he said, "and don't forget your book." The moment his door opened, bitter night cold rushed in and stung my face. The smell of wood smoke blew in with the wind. I got out and grabbed my suit jacket, shivering and wishing it was a real coat. I looked up to see the snow had stopped. The moon was bright and distant in the black sky it shared with millions of stars. The hairs in my nostrils prickled with each sharp breath. "Let's go," Lucius said. I followed him up the drift-lined path to the front door. The powder clung to my pant cuffs like confectioner's sugar. Lucius stopped before the door. On either side, frozen bushes sat mounded high with snow. Some had the shape of bonsai trees, only big. Each well-trimmed clump of needles seemed a fairy's cake frosted in white. The huge door could have been stolen from a medieval castle. It was made of thick oak planks held together with riveted iron bands. The top was rounded and a yellow glow came through a small barred window. I noticed carvings in the wood and felt a jolt. I recognized many of them from the cover of Emerson's Bible, symbols and ancient characters with meanings lost in time. Lucius raised his hand to knock, but the door suddenly swung inward. Music and warm food smells inundated us. Light flooded the night's darkness, illuminating a woman standing on the threshold with open arms. "Lucius, you've come," she said, and hugged him around the neck. I felt awkward standing there holding my bag while the wind turned one side of my face into a frozen mask. Looking over his shoulder, she caught my eyes and smiled. She released Lucius and pushed him aside to get a better look at me. She had dark hair pulled back in a thick braid and an indefinable exotic cast to her skin and eyes. It's a cliché to say that her smile was radiant, but it was. She opened her arms to welcome me with a hug, too. I hugged her briefly and feeling shy. She was delicate, almost gauzy, but not fragile. She placed her hands together as one would to pray. Holding eye contact, she offered a little bow. "Hello, Jacob. We've been waiting for you. Namaste." I just nodded. "Come," she said, catching my arm. "Get inside. You're shivering. Oh, I'm Caitlin, by the way." Lucius prodded my back with his fingertips, and I shuffled through the doorway. Caitlin herded us to a mat in the entryway, and we stomped loose snow from our feet. She shut the heavy door and pushed an iron latch into place. She turned to us, ready to take our coats. Neither of us was wearing one. "You boys," she said, "what are you thinking, no winter gear? Okay, come this way." She led us to the right and started up a twisting staircase, its banisters made of peeled fir limbs. They were hand-rubbed and gleamed like honey in the light. From down a hallway I heard conversation and cooking sounds. Someone played guitar. Incense drifted back in Caitlin's wake. We followed her up the stairs, Lucius ahead of me. On the landing of the second floor, she stopped and turned to a high window that looked out on the clearing. She held up her finger. "Shh." We stopped climbing. "Did you hear that?" Lucius nodded and smiled. I hadn't heard anything and shook my head. "What?" I said. "What is it?" She peered out the window, shading her eyes to see better through the frosty glass. She motioned for me to join her. She pointed to the edge of the clearing where the trees formed a black wall that blended with the darkness. "There," she whispered. "Do you see it?" I saw only the wide blanket of luminous snow stretching out to the trees in the distance. I leaned in closer, but my breath fogged the glass. I stopped breathing for a few seconds and focused in the direction she pointed. My breath mist evaporated from the window and my vision grew painfully clear. Suddenly, in such detail it caused me to recoil from the glass, I saw an enormous white wolf. Seated on his haunches some yards from the edge of the wood, he shook himself and seemed to look straight at me. He pointed his snout at the moon and let out a mighty howl that rose high, changed pitch, then faded among its own echoes. The alarm racing inside me wasn't due to the howl itself. One expects a wolf to howl in the distance. What shocked me was my sensation that the window had vanished and I was soaring on a current of energy the wolf's strange ancient song created. It was loud and hoarse and primitive. I was terrified and exhilarated to be alone in the presence of this primordial lupin entity. The howl came again, and I felt as though I were ascending above the landscape and able to navigate on my own through the crystal air. My whole body vibrated with the power of the sound. "Hey!" A hand on my shoulder pulled my face back from the window. It was Lucius. He and Caitlin regarded me with sober expressions. Caitlin turned to him. "It's already happening," she said. "He's more ready than you told us." Lucius nodded. "The drive up was intense, too. I expected to prod our boy here along a little more. It's moving quickly." Their voices were distant. I wanted to keep flying on the invisible energy reverberating under the bright moon outside. Lucius still had his hand on my shoulder, weighing me down. Caitlin leaned close. "Wolf medicine," she said near my ear. "It's not time for that yet. You have other things to see first." Yeah, well, I wanted to lose myself in whatever it was that just happened. Even though my feet were on the ground again, the big animal presence was still very real in my mind. The pure, joyful ferocity was tingling in my veins. Lucius turned me around. "Listen now," he said. "You're not in your world up here. You must follow instructions very carefully. There will be tests and many opportunities to become disoriented. I'll say it again, this isn't your normal world anymore. Be sure to take direction only those I introduce you to. Caitlin is one such helper. You can trust her, but under no circumstance assume your usual tools and defenses will keep you safe. If you wander alone and follow the advice of strangers you meet at this stage, you could easily lose your way. If for some reason you find yourself alone and someone approaches you, it's critical that you determine whether or not they are a friend. If they appeal to your vanity or try to use your fear to manipulate you, run, get away. Listen to your own inner voice. You'll know if they are a messenger of love and wisdom or just an impostor who could lead you astray." I nodded without words. Lucius and Caitlin guided me down a long hall and into a snug, warm bedroom. The bed stood in the middle of the room, covered with quilts and a goose-down comforter. The blue flannel sheets were turned back, inviting. A small lamp glowed on a bedside table made from a large pine stump. A candle burned on a bookcase beside a comfortable chair. There was a small attached bathroom, too. Lucius placed my duffel bag on a low dresser at the foot of the bed. I sat on the bed, overcome with weariness. I wanted nothing more than to collapse under the heavy covers. Lucius tugged at my shoes. Caitlin rolled me out of my suit jacket and pulled off my tie. I swung my legs under the blankets and pulled a pillow over my head. Sleep came to me like an old friend. Before I surrendered to unconsciousness, I wondered what was cooking for supper and who else was downstairs waiting to be met. My last thought was, I sure am sleeping a lot lately.